Good morning. Good morning. Okay. All right, now that I have your attention, good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And this is the April 12th Governing Board Workshop. Just want to cover, we have quite a few people here, and it's lovely. I'm happy to see so many people here. First of all, it's nice to see a lot of new faces. So for those of you who don't join us on a regular basis, if you would please silence your cell phones. It's if we don't get a lot of interruptions, that's nice. I appreciate that. You'll notice too that we have on our agenda, James Hazelwood, our legal counsel, is here with us as well. He'll be early in the agenda. So with that, we are going to go with 1.02, the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are able, please stand and join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We do have a quorum. Martin, do we have Christine yet on Zoom? No? Okay, so we have 7 members present. We have 2 excused absences. Director Williams and Director Novello are out today. We will move on to 2.01 with the approval of the March 8th minutes. If there are no changes, additions, corrections, the minutes will stand as written. Thank you. We'll move on to 3.01. This is with James Hazelwood, our legal counsel. These are the legal opinion of bylaws 5.06, 4.16. James is going to review these and give us all of his comments. There will be no comments from directors or the audience.
Yeah, because I'm leaving for Prescott after this, so I'm just being honest. Yeah, so
I wasn't going to say it, but thanks for saying that, James.
so it is what it is. And just so you know, if you're here about pickleball or tennis, I'm not talking about that. So, you know, at all. So, thank you, Lisa, and to the rest of the board for having me here today. As she said, my name is James Hazelwood. I'm an attorney with, now we're calling ourselves, as of this week, CHDB Law. For about 26 years, it's been Carpenter, Hazelwood, Delgado, and Bolin. And Scott Carpenter has decided to go off on his own, sole practitioner, so now we're CHDB Law. Our firm primarily, for those of you who don't know, represents condominium associations, homeowner associations, nonprofit organizations, like rec centers all over Arizona. So I've been doing this for 35 years, and I can't believe it, I've always also been representing rec centers for 18 years out here. So a quick review of why I'm here. Some rec center members have been pushing the board to, I gotta get my thing ready here, to use the bylaws to say Mr. Hurley is no longer a director, in effect to remove him from the board. But that would require, and that would be based on board action. I'm here to tell you today, the board can't do that. So that's not going to happen. I'm here at the request of the board and the president to tell you why rec centers, why the Board of Rec Centers, which is an Arizona corporation and Planned Community Association, there's a set of statutes that governs Planned Community Associations, why they can't take action to remove Tim Hurley as a director. Most of you may already know he recently resigned as president. You may also know the board had suspended him temporarily as president before that, and also temporarily suspended his membership privileges. I'm not going to be reviewing those things that already happened, the temporary suspensions. I'm going to talk about why there is only one way to remove a director, not an officer. Then I'm going to talk about the difference between an action for removal from that position and the confusion about qualifications and disqualifications to either to run for that position or to create a vacancy. Not to remove, but to create a vacancy in a director position. So first, we're going to look at Arizona law. What's up there, which is hard to see, is the Planned Community Association statute about removal, ARS 33-1813. You know about this because the community went through this last year, 2023, and was unsuccessful removing 3 directors. So the reason this is important is because this came along in the last 10 years, and it says right in the beginning, notwithstanding any provision of the declaration or bylaws to the contrary, all of the following apply to a meeting at which a member of the board of directors is proposed to be removed from the board of directors. So the legislature stepped in, as it often does, and says to HOAs, and we've got some new laws coming out again this year, like, we don't care what your documents say. This is the way it is. They said that. This is the way you remove a director. So in number 1 says, the members of the association who are eligible to vote may remove the member by a majority vote of those voting. Number 2 says, the meeting of the members shall be called pursuant to this section. Number 3 says, the members of the association may remove any member of the board with or without cause. So that's it. It doesn't say the members of the board, or any procedure of the board. And then number 4, just kind of as an aside here, because we're going to talk about it a little bit more, for purposes of calling for removal of a member of the board of directors, a petition that calls for removal of the board shall not be submitted more than once during each term of office. So the legislature put in there that if you fail, like has happened in 2023, you can't present another petition during that same term. Yeah, so before this came into existence, the problem the legislature had was, it was all about different bylaws and all sorts of different bylaws, and some boards wouldn't call a meeting when they had followed through on removal things. Some of them were being too aggressive removal, doing things like boards trying to remove directors. So the legislature kind of cleaned that up, in the last 10 years. So the bottom line is the legislature, a number of years ago, established this way, and that method is at a meeting by members, not by directors. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of something about removal of officers. That's totally different than removal of directors. That's in your bylaws. There's nothing incorrect about having a bylaw about removal of officers because it's consistent with basically what's in Arizona law. So that would be done. The board can always do that. I mean, virtually every association and every nonprofit corporation, the directors decide who's going to be the officers, and they could change it any time they want to. A majority wants to. So that says an officer may be removed from office by the majority vote of the governing board at any regular or special meeting called for that purpose when they determine it serves the best interests of the association. Then in 5.6.2, it says an officer who is removed shall remain a director of the governing board unless removed from the board in accordance with these bylaws. Well, again, there's some conflicting language in the bylaws, but the statute governs, and what your bylaws say, consistent with the statute, is correct, that the members remove directors. So with that as the basis for the board being unable to remove one of its directors, but being able to remove an officer, let's talk about removal versus qualification and disqualification. So remove or removal is an action word that means to dismiss from office, according to the Fine Law Legal Dictionary. This is consistent with Arizona law. A removal action can only be taken by the members to remove the director, and that overrides anything to the contrary in the bylaws. Because that's what the legislature intended, says notwithstanding anything in the bylaws. Now, contrast removal with the term qualifications for directors. Those are generally objective. And let's look at the nonprofit corporation statutes. Nonprofit corporation statutes are in 10, as opposed to the Planned Community statutes are in Title 33. So this says in 103802, the articles of incorporation or bylaws may prescribe qualifications for directors. Black's Law Dictionary says that's a term that describes a person's attributes that are needed for a certain job or position. Now, Rec Centers has some qualifications regarding directors in its bylaws, so it is used. So let's take a look at that. So this is in section 4.02 of the bylaws. It says selecting candidates. This isn't about removal of an existing director or anything like that. An owner member who's in good standing and available on a year-round basis is eligible to become a candidate. And then it refers to this other section about director meeting attendance, which we're going to look at, it says in a second. So that's an objective standard. And then 4.10 is about director meeting attendance in line with that's bylaw. So director's absences may be excused under 4.10.1, under 4.10.2, but if a director, if it has 3 consecutive unexcused absences, the position shall automatically become vacant. So there's no action by the board going on here. It's an automatic thing. The only discretion they have there is to confirm that something's excused. Like people have said, I'm not going to be able to make it, I'm sick, whatever, that type of thing. So again, this is an objective standard. So these qualifications appear objective, and that's what they are, particularly when it comes to candidates. But this also applies to sitting directors. So let's look closer at the quote, good standing requirement. So this is one of the issues that's been raised by some members. So keep in mind, Mr. Hurley is an elected, seated director. So section 2.05 in the bylaws goes through that an owner member in good standing shall be entitled to vote and hold office. Only resident owner members in good standing shall be entitled to hold office as a director. Then in 2.5.6, it kind of recites again what's part of good standing. So the person is qualified to hold a card, which generally means they're paying their dues and they're an owner. They have to be an owner, and that's true of tons of associations. Once you sell your home, you're gone. You're off the board. That's that's an objective standard. You're gone. The person is current with all dues. That's an objective standard. That's something you can look at. The person is not under suspension by the association. So this is the one thing that kind of runs afoul of the statute in determining, because of the fact that the board gets involved at some point in suspending, members. So that's where there's some confusion. And it's nobody's fault that the bylaws say that. When the bylaws are done or there's amendments done, everybody looks at it and goes, yeah, that's right. And until something comes up and it you look at it and go like, wait a minute, this isn't working. And that's what's happened today, because it's just, that particular thing isn't consistent. But until something comes up like this, you just don't realize it, So the bylaw is where suspension comes in, referring to good standing. So let's look at the section about removal of directors of the board, where it starts out, the whole first half of 4.16 really is just like the statute. It follows the statute. It says the members can call a meeting. It can be a membership meeting, petition, and a board member can be removed. So that's the whole first part is about that. But then we look at the additional part that gets down to 4.16.3, and that's what has been brought up by some members. And this is, again, when you amend bylaws and you draft bylaws and everybody on the board works hard at it, and they've changed many times in the 18 years I've been here. Sometimes I've seen them beforehand. Sometimes I haven't seen them beforehand, So this one is where you run into the same problem about qualifications versus authority to remove. So this part says, in addition to the foregoing, meaning removal by the members, in the event a director does not maintain each of the 3 qualifications for office, the position shall automatically become vacant. Again, not a problem per se, as long as it's objective and as long as the board isn't taking action to do something, deciding somehow, or suspending a director, to back into something that the membership's supposed to do. That's the key here. Let's see. So the 3 qualifications, it says the directors must maintain, again, similar to when someone's running for the board, they have to be an owner member. They must remain in good standing, which gets us back into that suspension thing. That's one of the good standing mentions, criteria, and have to be available on a year-round basis, which gets into the can't miss 3 unexcused meetings. Again, the objective one. So the only one that is the problem is that suspension thing, because you don't get there unless the board has taken action, and the board can't do something that's going to then back you into going like, well, he was suspended, so therefore, at the time he was suspended or now, he can't be a member, because it just doesn't fit. It's just inconsistent with the statute that requires the membership to remove. Plus, there's already been one attempt. That's as an aside. There's already been one attempt. So that is the crux of the matter. Can 4.16.3 be used correctly? Yeah, I think it's objective. Like, you don't pay dues. You miss 3 unexcused meetings. Because what could happen if you think about it? If you could use the board suspension thing, suspend, whether it's temporary or permanent or whatever, you could literally get into a situation where a board could do that every month. A board could start trying to take action every month, and you'd be having directors flying off the board right and left, potentially. So it's just not an objective thing, not to cast any kind of aspersion on boards who or anything like that, but it's not objective. Let's see. So using suspension for this purpose, in my opinion, is not legal. The corporation needs to follow the law that overrides its bylaws in that one area. And so even though that one part of that section says a member can ask for a board meeting to call a director into account, well, it's not going to be on account of that suspension. That doesn't work. The board can have a meeting to look at stuff like non-payment of dues, but not that. So, yeah, and it could still be used for candidates. I don't see any problem with using that for determining a candidate for the board. So, as a final matter, and another reason why the statute makes sense, that where members remove directors. This isn't exactly the same situation, but it shows what the Court of Appeals has done in a similar situation. There was a case called from 2016, not that long ago, McNally versus Sun Lakes Homeowners Association, another retirement community. Exemplifies why boards alone would not be able to remove sitting directors or otherwise take away their rights as directors to have their seat and to do things as directors. So in that case, the board had, because allegedly the director had been talking about confidential information from closed meetings and attorney-client privilege and, talking about it, emailing about it to the membership and things like that. So the board decided that she could no longer come to closed meetings, which is normally the right of a board member. Went to the Court of Appeals, up from Superior Court. And the Court of Appeals ended up reminding that a director has a legal duty and obligation to manage the affairs of a corporation. And what bothered the court, and what's similar to this situation, says instead of resorting to an unlawful self-help remedy, the association could have taken other actions to protect confidential information. So for instance, they could have gone to court to file it for a judicial proceeding to have that director removed. There is something in the Nonprofit Act about that, going to court, and then of course you would have to prove that they deserve to be removed. But so it's the same type of thing. It's like, in effect, when you're using suspension, it's kind of like self-help. Well, we suspended the director, so therefore they should be removed. So that just supports the whole notion. And so I want to, thank you for your time. I'm not going to answer questions or stay around. This is our opinion as a firm, and it's, the legal position of the association. And really, it needs to move on. We give all of our clients advice that's based on the law and keeping them out of trouble, keeping the association, the corporation, which is, all of you, and the board out of trouble. This is a great community. The board cannot act on the requests that are being made, and it needs to be allowed to get on with the process of governing, in my opinion. Respectfully, if any members believe this is wrong, my opinion is wrong, they should just obtain their own legal counsel, and we would go from there, I guess. So thank you again, and heading to Prescott.
Thank you,
Generally, yes.
Let's not have shout out from the audience, please. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, James. I appreciate it. We are going to consider this matter closed, but also I'm going to ask the board for consensus to have Mr. Hazelwood's legal opinion be added to board docs. If nobody, okay, Karen? Oh, she's up there. Oh, I'm like, where did you go? Thank you. With that, we'll move forward. Thank you, James. Safe travels to Prescott. We will move on to 3.02. If everybody remembers, we announced remind me. Puerto Rican Pete's, which is DBA Pete's Cafe, moving into the Memos location. And he's been over there Wednesday, Thursday, and today with his catering truck. It's been very, very successful. And so we had the results from the survey. They have been put up on the Sun City West website. Everybody's welcome to go check the results out. We're not going to just discuss everything here, but we welcome everybody to please go check the results out on the Sun City West website. And please go check out, if you haven't already been, to his catering truck. That will move on to 3.04 with the update on a master plan, strategic plan initiatives prioritization with, 3.03, I'm sorry.
Okay,
With
thank
Jack.
you. Thank you, President Vines. So the update that I'm going to give is our intent on how we're going to move forward with the strategic plan. Our recently resigned general manager has left some material, which I haven't seen yet, about the strategic plan. Our intent is that when the interim general manager starts, that that person will be charged with taking that information left by Bill Schwind and looking at it and starting the process of turning that into a strategic plan. Now, that will mean that he or she will have to take a look at the documents, see if they make sense, so that by the time that a replacement permanent general manager is here, that person will have someplace they can start from as opposed to starting with a clean slate. So we will make use of the time of the interim general manager to help get us there. So that's the intent. There will be a whole process around the strategic plan going forward, but part of the arrangement with anything like this is when a new person comes in, they have to own what they're going to be responsible and accountable for. So the deal is that, we'll give that person what has been done so far with some recommendations and some ideas and thoughts, and then it will be up to the permanent GM to take that and to run with it so that we won't lose this time between the resignation of Bill and the installation of a new general manager.
Thank you, Jack. Moving on to 3.04 with the revised MO3 policy. Still you, Jack.
Still me, okay. The MO3 policy is the cardholder daily guest fee policy that currently sits in policy FA08. We discussed this at our last meeting, and it was brought up that there were two items that to be looked at. One was that in FA08 there was a statement that said that the daily guest fee does not expire. So that's the first one, and the M03 did not have that policy, that statement in it. Well, there's a good reason for that. The reason is that the daily guest fee does in fact expire. It's only good for the day on which you get it. So you can't get a daily guest fee on a Tuesday, for example, and expect to use it on a Wednesday or even a week later, something like that. So that is a correction of what's in FA08. The other item that is in M03 is a statement it's under 4.3, which says that all RCSCW cardholders must have a recent photograph taken within the last 5 years on their rec cards. That is an accurate statement. The question that came up is this the correct place to advertise this to our homeowners, to our cardholders? And while I agree that not every cardholder is going to go look to this policy for that, the important statement here for the policy is that it states that this is a requirement. That's the purpose of a policy. So I don't see any reason to do any editing on M03. I recommend that we move it forward for a vote. And I will note that it will be up to member services to come up with a plan and a program to implement the policy, which is the correct place for that action. So that's my recommendation on M03.
Thank you, Jack. Any questions from the directors? Wow. And I'm going to ask any audience questions, but somebody's headed there. So when you come to the mic, please state your name and your rec card number, please, and write it down on the clipboard, please.
106159. Okay.
Name?
Oh, sorry, Sharon Heddick. The problem with this is that you have a lot of homebound people here who have lived in Sun City West for more than 5 years. So are you going to require them to come in and get a picture taken?
As I stated, that will be up to member services to handle that situation.
Well, okay, but you have it written as a policy. Are there exemptions then? It doesn't say there are any exemptions. So if I'm a homeowner reading this, I'm going to take this as I have to do it.
That's the intent of a policy, yes.
Well, I know, but you don't want to bring in people that can't get out of their homes and require them to come in and have a picture taken just because you want a picture.
That will be up to member services to develop the program to
understand.
handle it. And if they find that it's a problem, then we will revisit the policy.
You shouldn't have it in the policy to begin with because you have a lot of older people here.
Thank you.
Scott Arthur, rec number 131013. On the master plan thing, why, people I talk to wonder, why would we want to take
Mr.
something from
Arthur.
somebody?
Mr. Arthur, if
Yeah.
I can, we're on MO3.
Well, you didn't let us give comments on the first about taking over Schwinn's stuff he left in the computer. We didn't ask for it.
If you want to wait till the end of the meeting for member comments, I'm happy to address that.
I was on this particular topic. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any more comments on MO3? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move, go for consensus to move MO3 forward for a vote. So, MO3, Karen, will be unanimous, move forward. Thank you. .05 MO4. Jack, you're still up?
I'm still up. Okay. I have quite a few more comments to make about M04, so I'm going to read a statement that I've prepared. I did that only because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to say. M04 is a new policy about open sports activities, leagues, and tournaments. For those who may not know, the background of this is to allow what's called open sports activities, and those are activities that are outside of the chartered clubs system. So it allows things like tournaments and leagues to be held here in Sun City West on our facilities. And while I was not the author of policy M04, at one time I would have supported something like it. However, after reading comments and emails from cardholders, as well as my own reread, I've come to a different conclusion. One intent of this policy on open sports activities is to manage the use of our facilities for the events, these types of events. There is currently no mechanism in place to do this. So cardholders, without being a member of a chartered club, may today reserve, for example, tennis or pickleball courts and invite outsiders to play on our facilities. The only cost to them would be the $6 daily guest fee per person. There's no limit to the size or number of events that the individual cardholders may conduct if they so desire. Another intent of this policy is to allow individual cardholders to open our facilities to the public for the purposes of holding sports tournaments and leagues. These events might involve only family members, but they could also involve friends, acquaintances, co-workers, non-governmental organizations like civic or fraternal organizations, as well as other communities, whether age-restricted or not. So by way of example, and I only use these as an example, there are pickleball and tennis events involving non-card holders being played on our courts during the year. These events involve non-age restricted persons and persons from around the state and the country to come use our facilities, sometimes without paying the daily guest fee. And yes, some of these events are for charity purposes, but some are not. So policy M4 is the first step to better manage the use of our facilities. However, in my opinion, the policy needs to be revisited. And let me give you some ideas and thoughts on that. For one, the policy operates outside of the chartered club system. And at one time, I went on record as saying I stated that the chartered club system was limited in its ability to handle situations like those presented by tournaments and leagues with third parties. And that was true until the recent passage of the new RRMPs, which includes an accommodation process that can handle situations that would normally be outside the purview of the chartered club system. So there is a mechanism in place now that didn't exist when this policy was first written that would allow people to have these outside tournaments, and it would also allow the association to track and to manage the use of our facilities. Second, policy M04 has requirements that are difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. So for example, with initial reservations, there is currently no mechanism whereby the association is made aware that our sports facilities are being used for anything other than chartered club or individual cardholder usage. Yes, we have a system called Hold My Court, but that does not alert the association to usage above and beyond what we would normally have. So if we don't know how or who our facilities are being used by, what will make cardholders come to the association to sign a contract as described in M04? So they don't know they're supposed to do it. They have no reason to actually do it. And if it's happening today, how do the participants know that they have to pay for the use of the facilities, and including the daily guest fee? Do the people know that they have to pay the daily guest fee? So if anybody says, I'm going to have a family reunion, or I'm going to have some friends who will have a tournament, and they can reserve the courts, in my example, and they can hold the tournament, and the association would never know about it. So we have to look at how do we enforce these? The policy also states that open sports activities are to be, quote, held during times of low resident usage, unquote. How do we know when those times are? We don't have a mechanism to reliably measure that usage. We also don't have a way to forecast it as well. The policy also says that we cannot displace association cardholders. How do we know if displacement is or is not occurring? Again, there's no mechanism to measure this requirement. We also, as brought up in our last governing board meeting, there's the possibility that a cardholder who sets up a tournament can have a price of entry that's higher than the cost that the association would charge them to use the facilities. Therefore, a cardholder could make a profit off of using our facilities. We have no way of measuring that or even knowing that that might be the case. Scheduling for open sport activities would have to occur further in advance than we allow club members to reserve courts. So for example, pickleball courts can be reserved 7 days in advance by club members. If I'm going to have a open sport activity for a club of people that I have outside of Sun City West, I have to set that up maybe months in advance. So there's a good chance that we might displace people, displace cardholders like that, or there will be a scramble at the end 7 days in advance to move the event. So again, it becomes very difficult and creates additional work potentially. The association would be in the business of renting our facilities to the public through our cardholders. So managing rentals, monitoring usage, enforcing requirements, compliance, and contract adherence, etc., would require additional resources to complete these tasks. Open sports activities could become a revenue center like our bowling and golf facilities. Is that what we're aiming for? Would we need extra staff to take on tasks associated with rental operations? We're getting into a new business, potentially. Just like we have, if we've hired Pete to fill the restaurant space, we're just the landlord. Do we want to get into the business of being like a civic organization renting out our facilities? So along those lines, I believe we need to have further discussion on the longer-term direction of opening our facilities to the paid public, if that's the case, if that's the direction that we want to go. And maybe it is, I don't know, I'm not ruling it out, but I think we need to have more discussion on that. It's also been discussed that using the daily guest fee as the basis for renting our sports facilities has been suggested. Now, I've gotten a lot of feedback that says that if we're going to use the $6 per head per person, per day per person, our rental prices should be much higher so that the revenue is significant. So for example, again, I'll use pickleball as an example. There are pickleball courts being developed that they go for $35 to $40 an hour. And if we're going to charge $6 a head for a day, seems that we're missing. If we're going to go and be in the business of renting, we're going to leave a lot of money on the table. So we need to have further discussion either way, if we are or are not going to go into the direction of renting out our facilities. I also got some feedback that they thought that the policy says that the recreation manager and the general manager make the decisions. Some people thought that there should be a higher level of authority on that. So I'll just throw that out there as more feedback that I received. So my conclusions and recommendations, I think before going any further with this policy, we should look at its intents to ensure that we're addressing the proper problem. For example, to what extent are cardholders today using their privileges to arrange open sports activities? I'd be willing to bet that every person in this room, almost, has never thought about having a tournament or a league with friends and family and outsiders here. I don't see anybody raising his or her hand saying that they had that thought. So how much of a problem is this really? Is it a problem, or are we doing the right thing to close a policy hole to prevent a future problem? Or are we going to do both? So I think we have to think about this. I think we still need to address it in some fashion because it is an open loophole, if you want to call it that, that would allow individuals to charge to use our facilities. More importantly, one of the most important things I think is, do we have a plan to document and operationalize this policy that we might want to put into effect? I think this is something that we need to have the policy and the plan put in place almost simultaneously. Because it's very important that everybody knows what the rules are around this. I think that as a recommendation, the chartered club's accommodation process should be used to get as a first step on this, and as we get more experience, evolve that accommodation process so that we can learn from it and put something, and adapt to changing conditions. And as an editorial comment, I would say that if we have so much sports facility availability that allows us to hold sporting events involving outside third parties, that means we have extra capacity. And if we have extra capacity, we have no business considering building more of those facilities. So we need to think long and hard about what we're doing here. Or if we allow these outside organizations to come in and use our facilities, are we setting ourselves up to require ourselves to build more of these facilities? When we're in a landlocked state, we can't expand beyond what we already own unless we spend millions of dollars to buy buildings or rental or whatever. And then as a footnote, I'm just going to put this as a footnote. In my time on the board, and even before that, there has been a lot of discussion in this room about opening our facilities to the public or to third parties. Is it time to ask all of our cardholders via a referendum for their preference on opening our facilities to outside third parties and the public. Should we take a vote from our members and ask that question? And there are several degrees of the question that we should ask, but I think, is this something that we should work on instead of having these debates on and on and on? And that's the end of my statement. So my recommendation is that M04 should not be moved forward. We should return it to whoever had it and revisit the topic.
Excellent. Thank you, Jack. I'm going to ask the directors for comments. Yeah, Dick.
Jack, I appreciate the work that you've done on that.
Absolutely.
I know that this is a very complex issue. I want to talk about some philosophy. Philosophically, I think our facilities are for our homeowners, and I have no interest in opening them up to the public. I think that we as a board, and especially since I'm the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, we're very conscious and aware of how much money we spend and what we spend it on. And I don't want to spend money on facilities that I know that we're going to rent out. And as you say, they very well could be excess capacity. I think that's a mistake. I think it's irresponsible on our part to do that. As far as having a referendum on, do we want to open our facilities up? I don't think that's a good idea. My personal sense, and take it for what it's worth, is that I think the people in this room moved here because of the facilities that we have, and we have promised that this is what you get when you move here. We have golf courses, we have tennis courts, we have pickleball courts, we have car clubs, we have, on and on and on. And I think that's our responsibility, and that is to nurture those clubs, to provide them with the resources that we need. And I have little interest in trying to build excess capacity so we can open it up and rent it out to somebody else. So kind of in summary, Jack, I support your position that we should not move this forward, but I think there is an urgency to this, that we put some kind of a timeline on this, that we do pay attention to it, and we do focus on the revision of this particular policy.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Director Hurley?
Yes. The purpose of this policy was to put a box around things that are already happening. Each one of these bocce, lawn bowling, softball, pickleball, and tennis have outside tournaments where they bring in people from the outside. What this was trying to do was to give some structure to staff to be able to manage them. A lot of the objections that Jack had are operational. The purpose of the policy should be to describe the outcome that we want and leave it up to staff to develop the operational practices and procedures that they need to do to do that. So I would not like to kick this can down the road any further. I find it fine as it is.
Thank you, Director Hurley. Director Schlemmer?
Jack, thank you for your summary. That was very well said. I actually just want to echo agreement with both of your positions. I do think that we need to go back and revisit this. I am concerned that we run the risk of creating a monster that we do not want to have. And I would agree that I'm going to guess that most of the folks in the audience, like you said, I know I moved here largely because of the facilities we have and the fact that they are our facilities. So I do think this needs to go down for revisit and reevaluation.
Thank you, Director Schlemmer. Director Piaskowski?
I will agree with Dick and Jack and Ellen that we are here because of our facilities, and we have to really be careful of what we do with them, renting them out.
Thank you, Jolene. I'm only going to do it once a meeting, her last name. From then on, it's going to be Jolene. So, Director Leary?
Yeah, I just want to add a comment about the referendum. I think that anecdotally, I think we would all agree that we don't want to have our facilities rented out and used by the public. However, because it is already happening, and it's happening because of the sins of the father, previous administrations allowed it to happen. Some of these have been going on for 30-plus years. A referendum would validate and quantify the intent to not open our facilities to the public and would make it a lot more impactful that the residents have spoken. So that would be my suggestion about the referendum.
Thank you, Jack. Director Hammond, anything you want to weigh in on this? No? Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to open up to audience questions, comments. Thank you. Again, name, rec card number, and signature. Oh, wow, popular topic.
Good morning, President Vines. Bruce Lees, 135422, and the members of the board. This is going to be a contentious subject, but I think the cruise ship needs to make a big U-turn here. Bylaws and community standards basically are provided for the members and owner members and their authorized guests. I think instead of developing a policy to accommodate tournaments and other things that you claim to have that are happening, it'd be better for the membership to basically identify who those people are that are conducting them and stop their operations instead of trying to develop a method to accommodate them. I think we're going about it the whole wrong way here. We have monitors, we have people that regulate these activities within the charter club environment and outside of the charter club environment. I think we just need to do a better job of identifying who those folks are and expressing to them that that's not within the bylaws and not why Sun City West was created as this planned retirement community, active adult retirement community. And let's get back to the basics of our operation. Thank you.
Hopefully I'm talking on the right subject. Been a long day already. No, I agree totally with the last gentleman and Mr. Rhodes. And, you know, the thing that opened the door to this was allowing these other tournaments to begin with. Now people say, well, how come they get it? So let's stop this all outside allowing this stuff. This place was built for us to enjoy. Now we're getting into some other aspect. Forget it. I hope that was clear enough.
Yes, thank you.
Larry Plaster, 130627. And speaking on behalf, I'm the president of the tennis club, but in regard to Mr. Hurley's remarks that this policy was put in place to, if you will, provide a structure for what we're already doing. The tournaments that we conduct as clubs we do invite outside people, but it's for our enjoyment. We enjoy tournaments. We enjoy leagues. So it's not that we're bringing people in so they can enjoy it without our participation. And Jack, to your point that we control of who comes in and uses our facilities, speaking for tennis, and I suspect pickleball would say the same thing, we know who's on our courts. We schedule Hold My Court. We monitor who's there. If we go down and there's somebody playing that we hasn't signed in and that we don't know, we will ask them why they're there. So the clubs can control and have been controlling these outside events. We make sure the people that come in are there legitimately and the daily events of what goes on in our courts. So the clubs need to be involved in this, is my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Turner, 131829. I'm a member of the Charter Clubs Committee, and I actually worked on the RRMPs, but I'm speaking as an individual now. Tournaments and leagues are a major part of sports club activity. So wherever possible, when a club is being involved in tournaments and leagues, we need to keep that as being part of the chartered club activity. The accommodations that are in the RRMPs now is one way we can do that. And in, I believe, the majority of those club activities and those tournaments, residents are involved. It's residents playing non-residents. Very, very rarely is it non-residents playing non-residents. And in those situations, let's bring some focus onto that and see what we do where we have tournaments where non-residents are playing non-residents, because a lot of those are going to be the charitable events that are going on. And we want to continue to support those and have those happening. So my recommendation would be, wherever a team is representing Sun City West and representing this club, that should remain a club activity and not be something which is left to individuals to organise outside the club activity. And let's use accommodations to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I see Cliff coming, but he's not coming to speak. He's only coming back to his seat. So oh, we have an online comment? Okay.
All right, so this is from Gary Bach, 135435. His comment is, are we talking about possibly limiting all tournaments that may be nationwide, worldwide, that would advertise our community?
I would say that we should look at the whole picture that we have to do.
All right, so I'm going to go around the horn here and ask for your consensus to revisit this policy. So, Terry? Yes is we're going to go back and revisit the policy. No is to move it forward.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
No.
Karen, can you give me a count, please? No, and I did not vote. So. Okay, I'm going to vote yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So this policy will go back and be revisited. Okay, let's do something simple. We're going to move to 3.06 with the Director Hammond. You're up with the bowling rates for the fiscal year 24-25.
Do they have okay. As you can see on the screen, the Sports Pavilion Committee recommends the following bowling rates for the 24-25 season.
Karen, do we need a second? Or we're just, okay. Any discussion, or we're just going to move this forward? Director Hurley?
Yeah, I have a question. Did the committee have any analysis of surrounding bowling alleys and how much they charge?
I believe they did. They do that pretty much all the time. They try to stay current of what's going on. There is some discussion that maybe we should open up some of our rates, but we're still looking at that.
So how much is the 50-cent increase on non-resident, non-league bowler guests going to contribute?
Okay. I didn't-
I'm going to ask Cliff to come to the podium,
Yeah.
our CFO.
Hello, everyone. This was discussed at the Sports Pavilion Committee meeting in March. We did a presentation. There was an analysis done on comparative bowling alleys in the area. We presented Sun City really as our benchmark because we're attracting our outside bowling are 55 and older bowlers from the surrounding community through our leagues. So that really is who we benchmark ourselves against when we're talking about comparative rates for bowling. So with that said, we put together these rates. I will say that the 50-cent increase, this is a new rate of $4.50. They were in the past paying $4. So we wanted to create a differentiation between the league bowlers and the non-resident non-league bowlers and the non-resident league bowlers. So that's why we put this, it was recommended from the committee to put this in. It has a nominal impact on the budget. Most of the increase in the revenue in the budget is going to be year over year is going to be in the area of increased lineage because of the closure in August. So we were down 6,000 lines of bowling in August of this year because of the closure for the lane remodel. And then the other major contributing factor is an increase in special events through tournaments and utilizing the bowling alley better on non-busy days on the weekend for tournaments. That was drawn up by Barry and his team and the committee.
So what I'm hearing is the impact is minimal.
Very minimal.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Director Schlemmer?
I have a quick, very simple question. Can you give me an example of the difference between a non-resident league bowler with card and a non-resident, non-league bowler guest? What are those? Who are those two people?
Okay.
I give you an A for saying.
So a league bowler with a card, a league bowler is someone who bowls regularly in the leagues, and they're required to purchase a card as a non-resident to be considered that. And then, so if you're going to be a guest of one of those people, you would be a non-card carrying, so you wouldn't have paid the additional fee as an outside non-member to bowl. Does that help?
I want to repeat it back and tell me if I'm understanding correct. So a non-resident league bowler with card is paying a fee to be a league bowler, and then they're paying the $4.
Yes.
And if they bring a guest who is not a league bowler, like their friend, their wife, whatever, that person doesn't pay for a card. They're just going to pay an extra 50 cents, $4.50.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And has a minimal impact in the budget, to Tim's point.
And that card is $30, right, at this point?
I believe.
Is
It's on the rates.
Is it going, it's 20, no, wait, what is it? I'm looking,
It's 30.
30, right? At this point, it's 30, and we're not raising it at this moment, because we raised it last year,
Yes, we raised
correct?
it last year.
Okay,
Yeah, and we're within,
Okay.
just as well, just to give some more information.
right.
If you weren't at the committee meeting, we're within 50 cents of Sun City on our league rates, and our member rates were a little higher on outside. But
Yeah.
Again, we're going after the same
Clientele,
correct?
if you will.
Yes,
Right.
bowlers. Well, now, we do
Oh, yeah,
feel our facilities are worth it, so that's why we're more.
right. Thank you. And I think, and we're still averaging, the sports pavilion still is averaging about $52,000 annually in revenue. Is that not what it is?
Actually, the sports pavilion is on pace to make 90 to 100,000 this year in operating
There we go.
excess.
There we go.
Absolutely. 291,000 lines of bowling.
Yeah.
One of the busiest bowling
There we
centers
go.
in the state, probably the busiest.
Yay. So, yay. Okay, yay for the bowling alley. So, thank you, Cliff, appreciate it. So if, any questions from the audience, please come to the podium. Oh, my. Who'd have thought this was such a popular topic?
Bruce Lee's 135422. Do guests that are not members have to pay a guest fee to use the sports pavilion in addition to the cost of their play?
No.
So why are we not charging $6 for them? Because I can go bowl for $4.50, but it costs me $6 to go swim.
Welcome, Cliff.
Okay, so bowling and golf are both
Revenue generators.
yeah, they're both they have their own policies, so they're not on the same. They're not in the M policies or the facilities policies. They have their own bowling policies and golf policies. They're even carved out in the bylaws, so that's why. But there's no guest fee for those areas because they are opened. Golf is wide open, and bowling is less open, but they are open.
And the assessment is that our 50-cent increase for that new category is comparable to other bowling facilities in the area.
It would be, yes, compared to planned retirement community bowling alleys, absolutely. And then there is a difference between if you bring up the rate sheet, there is a difference between the member and the outside bowler.
Okay. I just think there's too many categories. You know, either you're a member or you're a guest. 2 fees, done deal.
Also, let me, let me just remind you that your $6, that when you pay the $6 guest fee outside of Sports Pavilion,
Yes.
that gives you access to all the other facilities. When you
Right.
pay for your $4.50 fee in the bowling alley, that's all you get. You get the bowling alley.
I understand your
That's what you
justification, yes.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't necessarily watch. I don't know anybody that goes to the pool, then goes play pickleball, and then goes to mini golf, and then goes to Stardust Theater all in one day. So
Yeah.
it doesn't carry much water with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Welcome.
Thank you. Lynn Kellis, 129120. Wow. Thank you for clarifying the guest of the guest. My question is, okay, so if I live in Surprise and I don't have a friend who has that $30 semi-membership card to play on a league and I want to come over and bowl, can I just walk in and bowl?
Yes.
And is that $4.50?
Yes.
There's an age restriction.
There is an age restriction.
There's an age restriction.
You
so
have to be, well, go ahead, Cliff. You want to do it? You
What,
want-
45 or something?
45. 45.
Okay, so if I'm 45 and I live over in Surprise and I want to go bowling, I can come over here and pay $4.50 a line.
Yes.
So do we need another category?
No, no.
Thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
beat that horse dead. bear with us one second. We have an online comment. We're trying to decide if we covered it or not. Director
Jolene.
Iskowski.
Maybe the non-resident, non-league bowler guest, maybe that should just be public fee because they don't have that card and it might be a little bit easier for people to understand.
It can't be public because it's age restricted.
Well,
45.
so could you write public 45 plus age? I mean, we know that it's age restrictive. I don't know that. I mean, it's just confusing to people
No,
when they look at it.
I think we're good with the description we have. It's been
Okay.
that description. If there are, I was going to say if there are no more questions, but never mind, because go right ahead.
Lynn Kellis, 129120. Okay, I understand the age restriction coming off the street, 45 years old, they don't live in our community. But as a guest of a guest, people who have that card again, is there an age restriction there?
Well, no, they're coming in with a resident. If
I
you
live
come in with a
I live
resident-
in Surprise, and I've bought that little $30 card, okay? And I want my niece to come with me. Is there an age restriction for her?
No, key word was she's coming in with you. You are
Because
the-
I have that little pretend card that says I'm sort of a Sun City Western.
No, well, if you have the card, it means you bought it, you're bowling in a league here, which means you're eligible to bowl here.
Okay, so even if I'm under 45 years
No.
old,
Our leagues, I'm sorry, my voice is cracking, but most of our leagues are age restricted to 45, 55.
okay,
Mhm.
then I understand. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for consensus to move this forward to the governing board for approval. Just a nod of a head will work.
Yes.
Thank you. Karen, it's unanimous. Thank you. So much for an easy topic. With that, we're going to move into 3.07. This is they're calling it a new capital budget item. That's a $160,000 RH Johnson Tennis resurfacing project. It's actually a repair and replace project. Carl, you're welcome to join at the podium if you'd like. This is just a very simple, it's been in the repair and replace budget, but it was moved to next year. And we need to pull it into this year's budget to get those courts resurfaced. So the board just needs to, Director Williams had a special meeting and brought it to everybody's attention. Carl, if you want to shed any more light on this subject.
All of our sports courts are assets, and they're all tracked in some form or another for repair and replacement. Originally, this courts were resurfaced when the courts were finished in November of 2018. Manufacturer recommendations say resurface courts approximately every 5 years. We make choices to extend those surfaces if we think the conditions are in good shape. We chose to do that, and we were going to extend it an additional year. And it has been recognized that throughout the middle part of this budget season, that those courts have aged out. They're desanding. We keep them clean. We keep them safe. But they will not get another year's life out of them. But that is a fully funded project in our reserve study tool, as all court assets are.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions? Director Hurley.
I have a question. If we're going to put $160,000 into this year's budget, don't we need a facts and finding to do that?
This isn't being asked for this 23-24 budget. It's being asked for the 24-25 budget that we're
Oh,
working
okay,
on.
then I misheard what
Right.
you said.
Thank you.
It's next year's budget.
Next year's.
Fine, thank you.
So are there any more questions from the directors? No. Any questions from the audience? Come on. Yay. Well, no, this is exciting, so.
Hi, Lynn Kellis, 129120. I assume you were saying Johnson Tennis Courts?
Yeah,
Right.
R.H. Johnson Tennis Facility.
My question there is, if that's approved to go ahead and spend that money, does that still give opportunity for the discussion that seems to be not really wanting to be talked about regarding tennis versus pickleball? And if some of those courts are going to need to be designated for pickleball courts, do we need to know that before the work is done?
I have asked both presidents from both of those clubs to give presentations to the 3 standing committees, which are Budget and Finance, Properties, and Charter Clubs in the May meetings. All we're doing today is we need to move forward with the resurfacing. They will give their presentations in the May meetings. Then the governing board will address the striping after those presentations have been done. And we will decide where the striping goes at that point.
So that answers my question. Then you would still be, if this passes, you still have time to make those changes if necessary. Thank you.
The resurfacing has to get done no matter what, because if we don't do the resurfacing, there will be no courts for anybody to use. Hi, name and record number, please.
Bill Weaver, 124087. I just have kind of a general comment regarding the fully funded and repair and replace versus new spending. If we're concerned about increased costs like salaries, other things, we should really be looking at new spending. New spending increases our assets and increases the need for more reserve funds. It increases things versus the R&R, which is just already planned, it's already prepaid. You should be dumping new spending over R&R.
We'll be addressing the capital budget in the next line item and looking at that. Okay, thank you. If there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and take consensus on this. Terry, just to go ahead and consensus from everybody? Okay, so we'll go forward with the resurfacing for the $160,000 R.H. Johnson Tennis Courts. Thank you. Perfect. We are on to 308, the fiscal year 24-25 proposed capital budget, 50 to 99,999, and then we'll move on to the $100,000 pullout. Where are my?
President Vines, is this being led by the governing board on discussion, and I'm here for Q&A, or do you want some form of review?
I'm happy to jump right in if you want. If there's nothing you have to say, I can go forward with pullouts unless there's something you have to say.
In the month of April, the only changes were in the new category to include $10,000 extra for the Beardsley Park fence and gates. That was based on discussions from Properties Committee to create just a little bit more of a safer exiting environment and just adding one more area of release in case there was any kind of emergency or anything like that. So, and then into the category of repair and replacement items in our reserve study, the discussion that we just completed of the addition of the R.H. Johnson Tennis Facility to resurface 16 of those courts somehow for $160,000. And those are the only changes for the month of April.
Perfect. Thank you, Carl. Was there an change to the irrigation, Carl?
That'll be presented on Tuesday. I am not aware of that.
Okay. So, and then it'll come back to us. Is that what's happening, Director Rhodes? Okay, great. Cliff, I'm getting this from our CFO, so we're not talking about it. So, okay. You're in the same boat I am. Okay. So I don't show any pullouts at all for the 50,000 to the 99,999. Is that?
Yeah,
Director Rhodes?
I don't know if I can really speak for the consolidation of all of the pullouts. Just to the 999. But I can't speak to that. I can tell you what BNF did. Okay.
That is the purpose of those recommendations that have come from all the committees.
Right now, I'm just doing to the 999. So we'll just move, if we're good with that, if there's no pullouts on the, I show none, I'm just confirming we have none to the 999. So consensus to the 999, that'll be moved forward? Okay. Oh, you know what, Karen? That's right, Kuntz is the 50K. That's the one, the Kuntz is 50K. That is being pulled out. That is a pullout. It got thrown in under the 100K. It got pushed to the 100K. Okay, so let's back up. For the 50 to the 99999, we are pulling out the Kuntz Tennis Courts renovation at the cost of 50K. Do we have consensus? Yes. Consensus unanimous, Karen, to pull that out.
President Vines, and these consensus are saying that staff can move forward with not representing these removed comments
Correct.
for the remaining budget season, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. You're welcome. We're going to move on to the $100,000 pullouts and above. Director Rhodes?
I do. We have Lizard Acres for $225,000 to pull out. We have the library expansion, renovation, design, and architectural documents for $100,000. And that's under the new capital.
And that's all I want to
Okay.
talk about.
We're not going to talk about the R&R.
Not yet. Okay. And that is, those are the only two for the new capital spend. If we have consensus on those, we'll pull those out. Director Hurley? Yes. Director Piaskowski? Okay. It's unanimous. We'll pull Lizard Acres for $225,000 and the library expansion for $100,000. New capital, we'll do those, and then for the $495,000 for the softball outfield fence for repair and replacement.
That's correct. That's what we have.
So we'll do consensus for the softball fence. Director Hammond? Yeah. Okay, so we have one no. Director Hurley for the softball fence? Pull it out. Director Paskowski? No, it is not. Pull it out? Okay, so we have one no. Yes. Okay, so. Okay. Correct.
The reason I asked the question is that next week we have forums, and it would be best that if we adjusted our slides not to confuse the community and pull these consensus items out of our forum slides. No?
The
Okay.
board still has to vote on them
good.
individually at the governing board meeting.
That's the direction I just wanted to hear.
So I can't tell you to pull them out at this point.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we will move on to 3.09, and that is the operating budget minimum wage strategy. Director Rhodes.
Thank you. I don't want to make this any more complicated than it is, but there are several if-then decision points that we have to make with this particular item. The legislation that we're concerned about has to do with two separate pieces of legislation, one of which is an $18 an hour minimum wage, and the other one is a more graduated increase of minimum wage by the cost of living plus $1, and that goes for 2 consecutive years. These two are running together. And to be very honest with you, we have no idea what's going to happen. But we do know something is going to happen, okay? It's irresponsible of us not to take this under consideration when we develop our budget. The implication, the financial implication of the $18 an hour law, for us, the annualized is $1.6 million. That's over and above what our budget is right now, okay? For our practical purposes, we only have to deal with 6 months of that, which will be January through the end of June. So we're looking at $825,000. Now, we do have a strategy for that, and it's a what-if strategy. Now, we've just been talking about our new capital. As a matter of fact, one of our homeowners hit the nail right on the head when he said, let's look at the new capital. And we did, and we just talked about $375,000 worth of new capital in Lizard Acres, Library, and Coons. Okay, we have divided the $825,000 strategy into three specific areas, one of which will be the proposed new capital projects. Now, right now, that's at $636,000. We're subtracting, we will be, if passed, if the governing board approves the pullouts, we'll pick up $375,000 of the $637,000, okay? Then we have a second strategy of allowances budget. In our allowances, we have $420,000. That's typically for things like a well pump, you know, $130,000, $80,000. But it's a fund that we can go to. We can be much more prudent and much stingier with that account, and we believe that we can find another $125,000 there. Okay. 375 plus 125,000. And then there's other issues with operational expenses that we know that we can delay, and there's two particular projects that we have in mind that would be for a total of $100,000. Okay. Now, the issue is that we won't know until after the 1st of July if sufficient number of signatures are delivered to the Secretary of State. If they're certified, and if they're certified, then in November, there's a decision point, will they get on the ballot? And then the final thing is the vote of the people of Arizona. Is it going to pass or not? So we're not going to know until November if we're going to have to be liable for the state required minimum wage. Okay. We have a strategy, and it's a graduated strategy, because we won't know until dates throughout the year, throughout the balance of the year, what's going to happen. It's irresponsible of us not to do this. I can just imagine, if you're a betting person, you can put your money on it. We're not betting people. You know, we want to make sure that we've got this sound and the strategy is sound. So Cliff Swan, CFO Swan, had developed, he had developed this proposal and had presented it to the Budget and Finance Committee. And the Budget and Finance Committee actually prepared a recommendation that they're planning to forward to the governing board to actually adhere to this particular policy. Okay. So that policy, that recommendation was to take all of the new capital, all of the $637,000, as opposed to omitting the part that the $375,000 that we just suggested that is not yet approved by the governing board to pull out. I'm sorry if this is getting confusing. I don't mean for it to be, okay? So the bottom line, the recommendation from the governing board is to take the entire $637,000 plus the $125,000 from the allowances account plus the other $100,000, and that would account for the $825,000 that we need at the end of the year if it passes. If it doesn't pass, business as usual. I'm gonna defer this now to Cliff. He and I have had multiple discussions about this, and he may be able to add some more financial clarity to it than I have. So Cliff, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Director Rhodes. Terry, can you put up the slide showing the timeline? So just a couple clarifications and just comments. We will find out after July 3rd, so sometime in July, if it gets on the ballot. So we'll know that in July, not November. If it gets on the ballot, we won't know if it passes until after the vote in November. So those are the two kind of sentinel dates. And then January 1 would be when it would go into effect if it does pass. And to clarify, those three items, the new capital in whatever form, whether it's just those three projects or if it's the whole bundle of new capital, the allowance for emergency purposes only, and the $100,000 in operating deferral projects, those would either phase out throughout that process or phase in. So if we get to July 3rd and we find out it does get on the ballot, we hold. We don't move forward on those projects in whatever form. If we find out in November if we find out it does get on the ballot, and then in November we have a vote and it does not pass the vote, we move forward. If it does pass the vote, then we withhold everything throughout the fiscal year on whatever items get determined to be in that strategy. So hope that helps, but that's what we're looking at.
So Director Vines, I would say that I think our discussion should start with the distinction between the recommendation that Budget and Finance had submitted to have the entire list of new capital, and that's the $637,000, as opposed to an iteration of that would be the $637,000 less the $375,000 that we have just talked about in pulling out for the new capital.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Thank you, Cliff. So correct, where we're at now with those pullouts of the $375,000, that brings the new capital spend down to 671, 674. So I mean, 261, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. 261, it's approximately, so 262, I like round numbers, so we're going to go with 262. 'Cause I like round numbers. So with that, I don't see any reason to put anything on hold. I mean, in lieu of waiting, like going into a holding pattern and waiting for these what ifs. What if this happens and what if that happens? And especially because we're able to look at the allowance, but, budget and that, emergency, the 125, where the operating expenses deferral of 100,000. And so with those numbers we're looking at, comes to a total of about 600,000 that we're able to defer theoretically. So I think it would be in the best interest to just move forward, because when we run the risk, if we just say we're going to put everything on hold, that items that we defer, we run the risk of those costs going up on those items, and we don't know the cost of what costs go up where, and then all of that falls on Carl's shoulders. And so I would like the board to look at just continuing on with the remaining items on the new capital spend.
Yeah, and if I could
Director
add something, Director Vines, there is a second initiative, not just the $18
Right.
initiative. The second initiative is one that's based on a cost of living index plus $1. Now, that one does expose us to somewhere around $250,000, $300,000.
Right.
And we were actually trying to just wrap that one recommendation in that would kind of cover both of them. But what we'll have is if we remove that, or we count on the 375 for the new capital, that'll actually put us in the same financial position with the $18 an hour legislation as it does with the legislation that is based on cost of living. So it's around 300,000 in either case.
So
Right.
my understanding then from Director Vines is that instead of putting the whole 637,000 on that holding pattern, we will put the three items totaling 375, and if they don't even pass, then they don't need to be in a holding pattern because they're not going to be passed. So because we're not voting today to take
No.
the whole amount, but so those three items totaling 375.
They're pulled out anyways. So they're going to the next fiscal year budget anyways. If
But
it's
they haven't
voted
been
on.
voted on technically yet.
Right,
So,
right.
So those are on the holding pattern.
Right,
That's the
they
proposal.
are theoretically the holding pattern, correct. You said it perfectly.
All right.
They are theoretically the holding pattern.
Okay. I can adjust the,
Yeah,
I can definitely
If
adjust
that
for
works.
that if that's what this
yeah,
board wants.
if we're, in consensus on that. Move forward with that. Oh, Director
I have
Hurley?
a question, yeah.
Sure.
So you're going to include the $600,000 for the proposed new capital in the budget?
Yes.
Okay, and the allowances are going to stay at 420 with a stricter hand on using it?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that when you say pull things out, that money's still going to be there. That's the contingency.
Absolutely. That's what I was just trying to clarify. We'll
Okay.
still have those in, but instead of putting that whole 600,000 in the strategy, we'll put only those those items totaling 375. And if they don't get passed, then we don't have to hold them because they'll stay in the reserve fund anyway.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we're clear, we're, okay? Director Hurley, or consensus? Okay, great. Karen? Yeah, easy for you to say.
You want me to take a pass at
Oh,
it?
yeah, you want to take a pass? I think I didn't say it properly, so I think I said it backwards.
Okay, so essentially take the proposed strategy
Yeah.
from BNF
Mhm.
and instead of deferring all new capital, so keeping the other two items in there, but instead of deferring all new capital, that's 600,000, it's going to be deferring the items totaling 375,000, which includes the Lizard Acres remodel, the Kuntz,
Library
the
and
Kuntz
Kuntz.
50,000, and the library 100,000. So those would, if they get passed in the budget, would be deferred on that timeline, along with the 125,000 from allowance and the 100,000 from operations. If they don't get approved in the budget, then they go back into the reserve fund anyway. It essentially takes care of
Right.
itself.
Thank you, I was saying it. They're still going to be out, probably out, because we're pulling them out of the budget anyways.
Well, that's a really good question, because if the legislation passes, we've got to do this all over again in a year.
Yeah.
Because then we're going to have to incorporate that into our operating budget.
Correct,
And we'll have to talk about how we're going to do that.
yes.
So that's part of the timeline, though, Karen,
Right.
to answer your question.
Yes.
In that proposal, if it passes, they get nixed.
Because they're going to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, they're still, either way, they're still going to be pulled out, and they'll be in the next year's fiscal budget. Thank you. Thank you, directors. Oh. I'm sorry, I need to ask for questions from the audience, and I apologize. I was so excited that we made that one was actually so much easier than I thought it was going to be, that I forgot to call for audience questions. So.
Bruce Lees, 135422. Thank you, President Vines and board members. I hate to be a thorn in everybody's side. Budget and Finance did in fact recommend pulling out all new capital spend. Is it possible to throw that chart up there to see what that total number was? Is that where the 637 total comes up to? But we're actually looking to cover 825 grand. Okay, so instead of pulling out everything that would get us 3/4 of the way to 825,000, we're going to piecemeal it and just take out those pet projects that nobody wants to spend money on and the community's in uproar about, instead of the $9,000 flagpoles and all the other ancillary stuff that's on that list. I would advocate that the board consider pulling out all the new capital improvement items that are identified for spend that equates to $637,000, and then obtain the additional funds to reach that 825 from possibly the allowances or the other mechanism that you had proposed. Again, if it doesn't make the ballot, no harm, no foul. If it doesn't pass the vote of the Arizona citizens, no harm, no foul. If it does pass in November, which the budget cycle will be almost 6 months through at this point, we just have a contingency that we'll have enacted, and then we'll deal with the remaining 825,000 next budget cycle. That's just my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Anderson, 132045. Thank you, President Hurley. Question, I need to understand something.
I'm sorry. President Hurley?
I'm sorry. President Vines. She'll kill me later.
Oh, my God. That was hilarious.
I'm glad I can make you all laugh.
Yes.
Okay, I need to understand something here. Where does the ending fund balance play into all of this? Let's say that this passes, the wages and stuff like that, and we want to go ahead and go with all the things that are listed on the possible future budget. What would our ending fund balance be percentage-wise if we did all of this. And I believe, and maybe I'm speaking incorrectly like I did with President Hurley, I believe that our, whatever there are, our rules or whatever say that we have to have a minimum of 40% ending fund balance to 100%. So I'm trying to understand this.
Can we put up slide number 10, please?
Okay, so I'll kind of walk through this. So the $825,000 impact is shown there with $18 an hour, the $100,000 from operations, and $725,000 from capital projects and allowance funds would make up the difference. Would keep our fully funded balance at 47%. Policy says we have to be at least 40. So this kind of keeps us on track with what the budget is proposed now. So the difference between this recommendation that came from Budget and Finance Committee and the current recommendation that was moved forward is $225,000, which essentially is a half a point on our fully funded balance percent. So this would show a $225,000 difference between what was proposed from BNF, what Mr. Lees talks about, versus what was how it was adjusted today. And that equals a half of a point. So we would go, I don't have the decimals, it says 47, that could be rounded up, I'm not sure, but if it was 47 on the nose, it would be 46.5.
No, I'm not confused. I'm just curious. You know, I don't think we should hold off on any of these things. Prices are going to go up, things like that. And especially if we're still going to meet the 40% or more ending fund balance. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Vines.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. So now let me I got my papers all out of order in trying to find. Can you come to the mic, please? Thank you, Bruce. And I did want to, in answer to your last question, I'm glad you came back to the mic. Thank you. In total, in trying to get closer to that 800,000, we're actually at 600,000 with all the pullouts we did between the 375, the 125, and the 100,000. So we're actually at 600,000. So.
Understood, and that doesn't include the 495 out of the R&R for the softball field, if that
Correct.
were to occur.
Correct.
Also understanding, has the board or Budget and Finance Committee possibly addressed merit increase raises? We know that we spend a considerable amount of our budget for our employees' wages, benefits, and entitlements, nearing 68% or so. We have to give everybody cost of living wages in accordance with the law, but we don't necessarily have to give everybody merit increases on an annualized basis. Can there be some discussion to possibly put a moratorium on that to help shutter some of the costs? I mean, 0 to 3% per employee on an annualized basis, 455 employees affected. That's a considerable chunk of change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have another person coming to the mic. But I did while we're waiting, I did speak to our CFO one-on-one about that topic. It does, if I believe I have my numbers right, Cliff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking about only about 30 employees that it affects the 3%. And I did talk about perhaps we need to maybe split it in half, the 3%. I don't know, we can't make that. It would take the whole board to make the decision. We would have to go in an executive session. But it's, again, we're back into the what if category. We have to say, what if this happens? We have to do this. Our staff does an outstanding job. they have done an outstanding job in running this facility in lieu of an interim GM coming on board. And we don't want to lose any of those employees. So, but the question was raised, so I just wanted to address that.
All right, Lynn Kellis, 129120. President Vines.
Thank you.
And directors. I really think that the plan that you've got going forward is a really good plan. I mean, we've got something which I give you kudos for. A lot of people would wait and say, oops, here we are, now what do we do? I did want to comment on, if it does happen that minimum wage goes up like that, I would really hope that this board would reflect on some of the things that were said about not giving merit raises to other people. If you've, and I'm sure some of you have been in management positions where you've had to manage employees and do merit raises and so on. If you bring somebody in off the street that's new, they're green, they've got a real learning curve. You might have somebody who's been in your business for 6 or 8 years, and now this new person off the street is making the same money as them. Now you're going to have a real big turnover, and turnover costs us all a lot of money. Everyone here, we're paying for it. So you really should consider not dinging their merit raises and knowing that there's going to have to be some kind of adjustment there. Thank you.
Thank you. That is something that has been talked about. Thank you. Perfect. With that, we are going to, we have an online question.
Okay, this is from Frank Bagnato, 117679, and Frank's comment is, it should be noted the $18 an hour incentive is not coming from the legislature and instead is being driven by outsiders with no ties to Arizona.
Thank you. Noted. We're going to move on to 3.10, Governing Board Officer Declarations for nominations for next year's officer positions. So excited for you guys. Do we have any? Jack, Larry?
President Vines,
Oh, I'm
are
sorry.
you going to include the 2 people that haven't been brought on the board yet?
I didn't even see if they were in the audience. I did not, I don't see.
Rudy's here.
Oh, Rudy is here. I don't see Dennis. Dennis was, oh, he is online. Okay. He was, I thought I saw him earlier, but then I think he left. But, so. They can, okay, just to be clear, I want to let everybody know. Today is not the only day they can declare their nomination. In our next meeting, when we actually hold the officer elections, they can declare that day, somebody can nominate them that day, and they can accept the nomination or decline the nomination as well. So with that, give me 1 second. Rudy, would you like to join us up here if you're planning on declaring for anything? If you're, oh, but we have an extra chair if you want to come join us for this part. Thank you. No. Right. No, Christine's not online. Thank you, Rudy, appreciate it. He has been, just so everybody is aware, the day they were elected, they were sworn in. So he has been sworn in, so in case he would like to declare. So with that, I'm going to open up the nominations. Director Leary?
I want to declare my intention to run for president of the governing board for next year.
I will second that.
Any other nominations? No? Wow. Oh my God. Wow. Wow. No? Okay. Rudy, you don't want to run for anything? Oh, Director Piaskowski.
I will declare for secretary.
Oh, excellent. Director Piaskowski is, oh, I'm sorry, position. So next up would be secretary? No, VP, I'm sorry. Boy, I skipped right over that.
I'd like to nominate Alan Schlemmer for VP.
Ellen, do you accept the nomination?
Thank you. I will accept that nomination.
Great. Next up is secretary.
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate Jolene Piaskowski for the secretary position.
Excellent. Jolene, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Super, thank you. And the last position open would be for treasurer. It's going to be quiet because Mr. Rhodes is not going to throw his hat in the ring for that position one more year.
Can we nominate Christine?
Director Hurley, wait.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Rudy Brum for treasurer.
Rudy, you've been nominated for treasurer. Do you?
I will accept that.
Okay. Thank you. No, there were none. I mean, oh, Jack, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. Other than Jack, no. No. That is it for the nominations. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, we have an online question.
So we did get an online question. This is from Dennis Horvath. And he, similar to the question we just had, as to whether or not you could have a nomination for someone not here. And the answer is we cannot. So they would be nominated next week. Or not next week, next meeting. So Dennis, that answered your online question.
They can accept an online, if they've been nominated here, they can accept if they're online. So,
He's wanting to nominate someone who's not here and not online.
no, okay, I got it. The answer is no. So understand, again, that is not your slate for the officers, because at the next meeting, when we'll do this all over again, anybody else would be welcome to throw their hat in the ring, and then the election will be held at that meeting. So thank you all thank you, Rudy, for joining us, and thank you all for being willing to accept those positions. And with that, I want to move on to 3.11. I want to remind everybody that it's now time for committee applications. If you're interested in applying for one of our standing committees, committee applications are online. The deadline is May 15th. Sorry. So please go on. The reason the deadline has to be May 15th is because once the officers are elected for next year, then Karen gets the applications, she has to sort them, and then she gets them to the new chairs. Once the new president chooses the chairs, they have to sort through them, they have to conduct interviews. It's a very long, lengthy process to choose the committee members. And so, absolutely, Director Leary.
I want to add, as somebody who receives those lists of applications, I would encourage you, if you decide to apply, that you remember that you are one amongst many who are applying, And it's much easier for someone reading these applications if you tell us a bit about yourself and what you hope to do on the applications. It's much easier to make a decision and to get to the next stage of the interviewing process. I have received applications in the past that were nothing more than a name and a phone number. And it's very hard to, decide if who is this person? Do you know who that person is? So it's like any type of application you might have. You have to separate yourself from everybody that's out there.
I do want to share with you that this past year was, as everybody I'm sure is aware, this is my third year on the board. Not that everybody knows, but I'm pretty excited that June 30th is my last year, my last day on the board. But I've had the pleasure of chairing the sports pavilion all 3 years on the board. I recently turned it over to my co-chair, Director Hammond, when they elected me president. But this past year was the largest year that I've been on the board for applications. And I'll say golf got the most, 75 applicants. Next was properties with, I think, 40-something, and I forget, charter clubs, 36, I think. So you can see the number of people getting interested in applying. So that is a lot of applicants. So please, we're happy to see people getting involved, people being interested, and it's a lot of interviewing process for us. So we love it. So come join us. This was the first year that my committee was actually full. In the past, I couldn't get a full committee, so this was great. So. And two other reminders, Karen's reminded me, that you can, the application does ask, that if you're interested in more than one committee, check it off, please. Obviously, you want to put where your interest lies, number one, because you can be interested in more than one. You cannot serve on more than one committee. And you also cannot hold, did we change that? You cannot hold an officer position in a charter club. Did we not change that? Okay, we did change that. So that is a new policy, that you can't hold an officer position because we felt that it was creating strife. So that's a new policy. But I think that's about it for applications and their deadlines of May 15th. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to go into board director comments. And before I go to everybody else, the one thing I want to say is a kind of a big announcement here. We have hired an interim GM, and we are just waiting on all the paperwork to be finalized. So we cannot advise you on a start date for him just yet, but as soon as we have that, a press release will go out. It's very exciting, and I can't really share a whole lot of other data until all the paperwork is finalized, but I did want to at least throw that little nugget out there so everybody can kind of maybe breathe a sigh of relief. I know I've been getting a lot of, everywhere I go, I get a lot of questions, and the staff is up to speed on this, so that is exciting for us. So that being said, I'm going to open up to director comments. Director Hammond?
Yeah, as the head of the sports pavilion now, I don't know if a lot of you know, but the manager of the sports pavilion has turned in his time. He's actually going to finally retire. And I think he said he was 75. So he's been with us for 13 years. So if you don't know him or have met him in the past, Barry Hardestein, he's done a very good job for the association and for us. Go by and say happy retirement to him. Thank you.
I think the only thing I'd like to say is to tell you how thrilled I am to see a large crowd here today. We're always pleased to see our homeowners that are interested in the self-governing process. So for whatever your reason was for coming today, I applaud you for that. I'm going to put in a plug for my own committee, Budget and Finance. That's going to be Tuesday, and we're going to have an interesting agenda on Tuesday. So Cliff is looking for the applause here. So at that,
Such a ham.
well done.
That's pity applause.
So at that, I appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to the Tuesday's meeting. It's going to be good. Thank you very much.
I have no comments.
Thank you. Director Schlemmer?
Believe it or not, I have no comments.
Wow. Jolene?
I have no comments.
Oh, okay, Director Hurley?
No comments.
My. I guess that leaves it to audience comments.
Lynn Kellis, 129120.
No.
I just wanted to thank the board and the rec center for bringing the attorney in today. It was pretty enlightening. And Mr. Hurley, I owe you an apology because I sat here last meeting and I honestly was overwhelmed by the abuse that you took. And I'm sorry I didn't stand up and say something in your defense. But anyway, it was very enlightening today. Thank you for going to the source and bringing him here to clear this up. Thank you for the time you give.
Nick Turner, 131829. Just a clarification on the prohibition on officers of chartered clubs sitting on committees, because that's not in effect at the moment. I know it applies to the governing board, but the implication I just heard was that it applies to committees too.
No, directors of the governing board may not be officers of a chartered club.
That I understand. But just from the statement that was just made when we were talking about applications to join committees.
Okay, that's my fault. I misunderstood what the question was, what Lisa asked me. So the policy is that a governing board director may not serve as an officer of a club.
Yes.
Jack misunderstood the question.
I misunderstood.
So
We
for the
misspoke.
sake of clarity,
We
members of standing committees who
we-
are not
we
governing
misspoke.
board directors can be officers
We
of a chartered
misspoke,
club.
so yes, if you would like to be on a standing committee and you are an officer in a charter club, you can be on a standing committee.
Okay, thank
That
you.
is correct, yeah. Sorry about that.
Sorry. It's hard when you're trying to whisper up here and
Ron Wambach, 100988. Two items. One, I don't understand this $50,000 fund or whatever that the general manager has. Where does that come from? And is that something that's in bylaws, or where is it, or budget, or where is that found? Some $50,000 discretionary items that they say he can make on his own without going through the board?
right. Cliff, do you want to take this?
There is a bylaw that gives the general manager discretionary spending up to 50,000. That's not to be conflated with allowance funds.
Right.
However, allowance funds are used for unexpected items, which could include emergency items or things. For example, we did the bowling alley and we decided to move up the flooring. The transition flooring was not on the reserve study, but it made sense to do the transition flooring at the same time as the bowling lanes. So we used allowance funds to do that. It was a repair and replacement item, so it would have come up the next year, but we decided to use the allowance funds to take care of that flooring at the same time. So that would be an example of a non-emergency, unexpected spend that we took advantage of. But the $50,000 threshold is set in the bylaws.
Say it again, please.
The 50,000 threshold for the general manager is set in the bylaws.
In the bylaws. And is that a per event, or is that per calendar year, or how does that run too? Is that in the bylaws?
There are no limitations at this time on number of times he can use that.
So we're talking 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, all the way down the way.
As
And
long as the
that's
funds are budgeted.
Right,
So the funds have to be available,
available.
but the general manager has the ability to execute within those available funds up
Correct.
to 50,000.
Right, so we're getting a new general manager somewhere along the way, and I would hope that more discretion is applied by the board as to how those funds are used than what we did in the past. It just struck me as a little bit unusual on what certain items were being done here under the guise of this $50,000 in the past, and I'm a little bit suspect of how some of these things got done. Enough on that one. Item number 2, let me move on. Before, you talked about that MO3 and the RRNPs. I talked about this previously when we said, oh, you can run a tournament if you wanted to as a citizen. And we're sort of looking at reversing that situation. It sounded like, and rethinking that MO3 provision and referring back to the accommodation provisions in the RRNPs. As I said last time, those provisions in the RRNPs also restrict how you can have different people come and play within tournaments. Between pickleball and tennis, I don't know what lawn bowling does. We don't necessarily play together. I don't play with the same people, and I've explained that before. So you're still going to be, unless you modify that MO3 provision to allow for true tournament play, you're still following up all of the tournaments that we're looking at doing between whoever is playing.
Right, it's MO4, not
Oh, okay.
MO.
I know.
yeah,
I thought I
Right, you
took
probably
all
had
three.
it written down, so, yeah, MO4. And we're going to have to probably end up, I think ultimately that probably needs to be worked on through charter clubs. And we'll have a discussion on that because there's just too many loopholes in that policy. And we have to try and close some of those up.
Okay,
So,
thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you, Ron.
Bill Weaver, 124087. And now for something completely different. I'm just wondering if the board has investigated or looked into squatters' rights in Phoenix area, in this area in Arizona, and do we need to be assured that people won't squat inside of Sun City West and have squatters' rights and this and that? Has it ever been investigated? Do we know what it is?
That would be for CCNRs and James Riley, and I'm scanning the room, but I don't see him here, so I'm happy to add him to the agenda for the next meeting and ask him to address that for us.
That would be good, because
If you
if
would
you
that
look at
work?
what's happening across the country, some of these have really
Karen?
turned
would
on
you- Okay,
residents.
we'll add him to the agenda for the next meeting.
All right.
Great.
Item 2, Lizard Acres is kind of still on the agenda, and I don't know if that is the suggested casual dining or whatever, but I would suggest that anything that we have that is a potential revenue source should be set up as a profit center with full transparency, so we know whether it's generating revenue or just a continual loss of revenue.
Lizard Acres gets discussed, their profit gets discussed at every sports pavilion meeting, and the revenue is shown through the sports pavilion meeting, and I believe you can find that if you go online to Board Docs and pull up the sports pavilion meeting, the attachment is there, and it shows the profit. Lizard Acres continues to turn a profit every month.
Okay, great.
Under the Barry Hardesty's, the bowling manager's report.
And then final, is the softball fence a fully funded item on our, that's funded by the reserve study? Is it in there as an asset? Is it fully funded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Gary Bosak, 102-585. Just a point of clarification, I think the insinuation that Ron was making
was that the general manager is a overspender. Every single item that's spent from that budget is detailed in a report and is published. It's public information. Every dollar that's spent that comes out of that account is accounted for. And if there's any questions about it, the governing board has responsibility to ask those questions and second guess those expenses if it's appropriate. But they haven't been. We see them every year, so they're available if people want to look at them. I, like most of you, know that your service is really appreciated, and it's a tough job. It's 3 years of in essence, giving up your life, but turning it upside down, because the time that you spend doing work for this community goes unnoticed and sometimes in a very unthankful way. Tim Hurley spent 8 years giving his service to this community on the governing board. He took it over during a time when the board was in absolute chaos, added sanity, organization, authority, brought it back to the level that it's been for the last few years, where it's gotten things done for the community in the absolute correct way. There was no reason for him to have to go through, nor the others to go through the recall that they did this past year. It was illicit, unnecessary, and most of all, unforgivable. But that's history. So I, like all the others who appreciate what you've done, Tim, there are a lot of new people in the audience today that haven't been to a meeting before. And I think it's important they know that the contribution that you've made is appreciated by many, if not most, all people in Sun City West. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, our next workshop will be May 17th, right here. The next regular governing board meeting is April 25th, 9 a.m. right here. And this meeting is adjourned at 11:18.